So when it comes to digital marketing, there are a number of what we call channels, routes to getting people to visit you or your website or learn more about you. And traditionally, we think of marketing in sort of three circles. They don't quite overlap. And this is a very poor Venn diagram. There's a very good pitch on Twitter, I'm sure you've seen it, of the inventor of the Venn diagram was Charles Venn kissing his wife. I'm not sure if you've seen that, it's quite nice. Like that, basically. It's very good anyway. It's a bit dodgy. We'll edit that one out of the video. So we traditionally think of our channels in terms of what's called paid, owned and earned. Paid is where you spend money to get visitors or to get people to learn more about you. So for example, you might pay to have a sponsored post on Facebook which reaches a certain number of people and gets them to click through to your Facebook page and like you, for example. Owned is the community or the people or the audience that you already have, that you own, that you've built up, that you've cultivated. So it might be, for example, your blog. That's an owned piece of content that you control, that you regulate, that you can promote to, and a mailing list is another example of that. And then earned beyond that is any kind of audience or any kind of content that you work and you acquire through effort. So, for example, you producing lots of great videos on YouTube, or you putting an article out on your blog, or you doing some sort of media elsewhere, will get people who are searching for things and will get what we call organic search through. So you earn that. And these are the three principles. But they break down into the following channel. I'm sorry if I'm using it here. So, the first term you might have heard of is called PPC, which is pay-per-click. A pay-per-click, PPC, really simple. It refers to any form of marketing where you, as a business, as a brand, are paying for every visitor that comes to you. And normally, the easiest way of thinking of pay-per-click and how it's traditionally talked about is Google AdWords. So when you're on Google, you do a search for, I don't know, birthday, Christmas present ideas, for example, or Christmas ideas for dads, I don't know. You'll often see at the top of the search results some sponsored results. And those sponsored results are pay-per-click. So each of the companies that is advertising there has said to Google, I will pay you X pounds or X pence if you display my advert whenever anyone searches for a certain term. So you say the terms that you want to appear at the top of Google for, and Google will say to you, okay, this is how much you need to pay me, or we will debit from your account basically, every time someone clicks on one of those results. I'll come back to PPC in more detail, we'll just cover a couple of topics first. Organic is almost the flip side of the coin. These are any visitors, any clicks you get, any traffic you acquire from people finding you on Google that do not click through one of the sponsored searches. So obviously sponsored searches occupy between 3 and 8 roughly places at the top of the search results and again at the side panel, depending on the search that you do, depending on the demand for that. But everything else, Google is constantly scanning the web, it's indexing any websites you've got, any Facebook pages, social media profiles, all of the content. It's penetrating, following links, and it's applying an algorithm to the content that you've created to try and work out what is that content about. So, for example, it will look at a Facebook page and it will say, oh, that's interesting, it seems to mention, I don't know, ceramics quite a lot, it seems to mention pottery, arts, crafts. Okay, so I think this is probably a Facebook page for someone who's perhaps into ceramics or a ceramicist. And when people are searching for certain terms, it might feature you, depending on how relevant Google feels that page is to the search term being used. But it's the flip side. You don't pay for organic, it's something you earn, you develop, you cultivate over time. It's a longer term byproduct of you being active on the internet. And we'll talk a bit more in detail about how, over time, you can cultivate this organic presence. Social media is obviously a big source of traffic, and again, we'll go into detail as to what that kind of traffic process is, but essentially, sorry, I realize I'm dangling wires everywhere, so I'm just get that. It's not okay, I think. social media encompasses any traffic that comes from a social channel, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and remembering that there are, of course, millions and millions of different social profiles and social networks that you could be a member of. It's not always Twitter, it's not always Facebook that is the right channel for you. We'll talk about some of the main channels and some of the more niche channels that might be relevant later. And then beyond that, 2 other sources. There are really only 5 sources. The fourth is what we call referrals. And then lastly, direct. And I'll do direct first, it's the easiest one. Direct is someone going online and going www.mysilversmithdesigns.com. You're told they just go to you. There's no obvious route that they navigated to get to you, they just knew to go to you. And that will encompass people coming back to you, repeat visitors who've heard about you and just want to visit your website. Referrals is, as the name suggests, any traffic you get through a partnership, through somebody sending traffic to you. That might be featuring on the Recreate website, for example. If you're active on the Recreate website, if you've got a profile there, if you've got your content coming through, we obviously get a fairly decent amount of traffic, and some of that will click through to you, and that's a referral from us to you. If, I don't know, you feature in a BBC article, let's say that was the Utopia, you were featured on the BBC as a small business in Ipswich, and they put an article about you, you would get a ton of traffic from them to your website, and it's a great referral from there. So you might think of this as a bit like partnerships and PR. That's a bit like content. This you're paying for, and this you're having to work to get. And how they kind of behave is actually very different. So the different channels offer different qualities of traffic, so they cost different amounts. Some of them you have to actually pay. Some of them you still pay, but through your time and effort and investment that you put on social media and your online activity that you might have been doing other bits and pieces. But others, they're a byproduct that develop over time. Pay-per-click is generally very good traffic, depending on how you run your pay-per-click campaigns. You're essentially saying to people who are doing something or looking for something or trying to find a particular bit of content online, come and visit me. So for example, if I am a car insurance company, if I'm Aviva or whoever it might be, Compare the Market, any of these aggregators, I'll be paying Google money to say, right, anyone who searches for the term cheap car insurance for elderly drivers, or whatever the term is, display my advert and come through to me. And because pay-per-click is really all about intent, you're targeting people who are proactively telling Google that they intend to do something, they're actually looking for something, it generally qualifies really well. So as long as you target the right keywords, as long as you're smart with your campaign, which we'll talk about shortly, you will find that the traffic you get to your website, this is strictly online at the moment, it tends to be quite qualified. And when we say quite qualified, what we mean by that is, when it first visits your website, a lower proportion will bounce off and go elsewhere, so more will stay. More of them will tend to interact with it, they'll engage with it, they'll follow links, and there'll be more in-depth probing of the content on your website. And they're probably more likely to buy or sign up or add their name to an email list or whatever it might be, register, for example. So pay-per-click is probably the most qualified traffic in a way. Conversely, it's the most expensive. You have to actually pay for it. But for a small business, it doesn't need to be very expensive at all. There's ways of doing it for a very small amount of money if you just want to try it out. For bigger companies, there is such intense competition in pay-per-click. And one of my sort of favourite things to share at this point, which I think most people aren't aware of, is things like car insurance, home insurance, holidays. It's such a competitive market, pay-per-click online, that every time, let's say you did a search for cheap car insurance or car insurance, and you see Norwich Union, Aviva, I don't know, whoever the other insurers might be, every time you click one of those links, it probably costs the insurer about £25 to £30 just clicking on the link, whether you do anything or not beyond that. It's a huge cost to them to acquire you. And it's because they know that they have a very high conversion rate. So of the people that click through, 1 in 10 might take out insurance. So for 10 people, £25 a click, it's £250, but they probably make more than that back from that customer. So some terms are very expensive. For you, it's going to be pennies rather than pounds, which is good. Organic, again, it tends to perform less well than PPC, and it will be very variable depending on the nature of what queries or searches you're appearing on. So focus is on building up a good organic presence essentially in search results, which comes shortly. Social tends not to do very well actually. As a social media person in my background, a lot of people think that social is like this easy way of getting people to learn about you and to do stuff. And actually social traffic is very transient, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because if you're on Google and you're searching for birthday present ideas, that's great, but if you've got Facebook fans or you've got Twitter followers or people watching on YouTube, they're not really thinking about buying anything from you, they're just interested in what you've got to promote or sell, or the items that you might be producing. So you don't actually have as qualified traffic. You'll find that when they come through, it kind of doesn't perform as well. It bounces more, or it might engage quite heavily, it might look at your content, but it's unlikely to convert, it's unlikely to buy. So again, at this stage, interesting question, going back to what I said at the beginning, as to when you think of your conversion funnel, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to sell products? Are you trying to get people to learn more about you or make an inquiry? Social media might not be necessarily where you invest in time. Referrals, again, very, very poor performer generally, depending on who the referral's coming from. If, I don't know, you featured on the website of an art gallery, well, the sort of people on the art gallery's website are probably the sort of people who might like your work if you're an artist, so the referral generally will do quite well. Equally, if you're selling, kind of historic or nostalgic speedway brands, then you're appearing, I don't know, on a motorsport forum, then you might find that the sort of traffic coming through is quite qualified. But if you appear, I don't know, on a BBC news article, for example, which has a very generalist audience, you'll find that the people coming through, they're not really useful to you necessarily. They might just hang around, they might give you a big swipe of traffic, but do they actually buy anything? Probably not. And direct, of course, is possibly one of the most qualified. So these people are proactively coming to you for whatever reason, and that can be a very, very varied performer. So what I'm going to do is go through each of these, and I'm going to try and give you a sort of overline view of how they work. And then I'm going to focus at the end on social media and the different channels and what you can do there, because as a small business, if you've got a product that you want to start developing into a business, a formal business, or as a sole trader, or as an artist that wants to go out and sell your products and make people aware of your work, you probably will spend less time doing that, to be fair, but your attention will be on social and organic and producing content.